Great, thank you. Thanks for introducing me. So yes, I'm Anja. So we are a digital experience design consultancy. Let me just see whether that works. Yes. That believes in successful businesses are built on great experiences. So we design everything to do with design systems, but also obviously starting off with the product and service itself. And we focus on delivering measurable results. So everything we do has to be measurable, like the design system that we're talking about today. We do this to generate greater loyalty, greater customer experiences, better efficiency, and faster growth, amongst many other things that you can measure. We work for a whole number of large corporate entrepreneurial companies and ambitious startups, and have worked on design systems, and usually start with a build guide, then a digital style guide, and then often moves into a design system as scale happens with the organization. And we've worked for Nokia Siemens Networks, for design systems, for Rio Tinto, AT&T, and many other companies. So it's something we do on a very regular basis. So what I want to talk to you about today is having a design system is brilliant, but actually getting one done in the first place is you have to develop a business case. And you also have to figure out how to ensure that the organization adopts it into the organization, into the framework, into the fabric, because it is cultural change, a design system. It's a behavioral change. It's completely transforming how an organization works. So it's key to figure out how to get a company to adopt. A bit of context first. So needless to say, most global companies that have products and services need to be digitally accessible, if not now and in the future, pretty much all of them. And with that brings the sort of demand for smart devices and IoT and mobile first. And that brings with it a complete sort of requirement for many different screen sizes and devices, dispersed teams around the world as companies grow, the scale of the company, the scale of the products and services as they need to become larger, organizational drive to make things faster, quicker, get out to market faster, competitive driver, really, really important. And all those things factor into the need of a design system. And Miranda was talking about quite rightly about you need to start somewhere quite early, otherwise it's a complete mess and nightmare to work with. But a design system, to sell in a design system into an organization often comes with the need to scale efficiently. And so I kind of like to sort of compare that to an architectural metaphor. So a kit house on the left obviously is a lot faster to build because you've got pre-designed components and modules and code and everything else. Versus a customized, huge, piece of design excellence on the right, which is tailored and customized and will take years to build versus weeks to build, which is the kit house. Now, what I'm not saying is that design system promotes designing kit solutions, but it's the framework, the baseline. If it's there, then everything else will happen much, much faster. But it also comes based on complexity. As products and services become more complex, and I have to apologize, I've forgotten a lot of quotes for where some of the references come from. I have to beat myself up about this later. But this graph is not ours. I don't know where it comes from anymore. Sorry. But it is about complexity. So as products become more complex, there's a sort of curve which kicks in where a static style guide will suffice to share around the team. But as products become more complex, the need for design systems kicks in. So, crucially, how to get buy-in. Who in the audience has the unenviable task to actually having to sell in a design system or has sold in a design system? Challenges? Easy? No, I doubt it. So, this is great. However, this is not going to rock the boat of the investors. It makes sense to all of us, this mission statement, to the designers and coders and strategists and planners. But this doesn't cut the muster for the C-suite or basically the money people who will have to put investment upfront into the system. So how do we actually start that conversation? And as you may well know, it's hard enough to sell and design thinking into an organization in the first place, the benefits of design. And really, the key message is focus on bottom line impacts. If you need to generate a business case to get an upfront investment into the design system, then there's lots and lots of fantastic facts and figures out there, but it's still not going to cut the muster if you need to actually justify a design system. But design thinking is something that is being much more accepted and integrated into the business strategy today than it was even last year. And it's because companies realize it drives unique competitive advantage. And it is focusing on those measurable benefits that will help you sell in that business case. So it's really hard to actually get some numbers out there because I believe that a lot of companies don't want to publish how shit they were beforehand and how good they could be in the future. We have a client that we're working with where we had to dumb down the numbers of the ROI by half because they were so embarrassed about how much money they were wasting beforehand to develop the business case. So, but this one is a good one. This one is not solely focused on design systems, but actually on the impact of the design thinking practice. And I very much assume, obviously, that IBM has a fully fledged, wonderful design system. So, and this is a really good starting point. So, design generates ROI. Okay, so bottom line impacts. It saved IBM 20.6 million in cost saving and designing things right in the first place. It also reduced the risk of getting products and services out to market and increased the portfolio profitability. And what that actually means is when you're launching a product and service to market, you want to make sure that people actually use it to get your return on investment and to generate conversions, engagement, and whatever else you're measuring. But then also, very important, faster to market. So these days, like startups, you don't have time to waste to spend a year on a waterfall methodology. If you're getting out to market 2 times faster than your competitors, you have that competitive advantage. This is a really, really important metric to think about. And clearly reduce design time and reduce the dev time. So where do you start with building a business case? Start with the pain points in the organizations, and they will be very similar to most organizations, because they're common pain points. First of all, as company scales, you have an increased design debt of things that you cannot reuse, modules that you create again and again and again that are not reusable, and hence that creates an incredible weight on the company to move fast. Duplication of efforts. So if you have to constantly recreate the same component, the same module, the same pattern, you are bound to end up with inconsistencies, and that will basically impact the brand perception. And it just becomes a very, very messy affair. As products and companies mature, they scale, and that essentially brings with it the growing pains of having to do things faster, bigger, quicker. And that means you have to scale faster. You need a better process to make that happen. Reinvention and innovation. So if the designers in the organization need to constantly reinvent the wheel every time they're designing a new product and service, there is no time to innovate, because there's often no money to innovate either, because the money is spent on actually paying the designers to reinvent the wheel all the time. So it's a kickoff. It's a real driver for innovation if you have a design system, because you can focus on the things that really make a difference versus recreating the whole damn thing again every time. It reduces and waste, of course. You have a lot of waste and teams working in vacuums, which means lack of communication between the teams around the world will mean inconsistencies and frustrations and a lot of time spent. And then, last but not least, speed to market. As somebody mentioned earlier on, corporates, globals, should have a startup mentality as much as a startup. because there's no time to waste to get new products out to market these days. If you're out to market first, you have that first market achiever sort of advantage. So it's a real driver to get things done quickly. So this is so we've been working with a client this year where we went through a very, very brutal pitch process for this big design system. And then we thought, brilliant, we won it. Let's get started. No. We had to help the client stakeholder to actually sell in the design system to about 3 levels of C-suite owners. So the CIO, the CTO, and the CEO. And this is the size. It's not as big as my fellow here, HSBC, but it's 90,000 people around the world. They have 1,600 websites and applications, and I think only one website, which is the corporate website, has been designed with a designer in mind, with a UX designer. So everything else has been driven by technology, and we all know what happens. This is no offense to the technologists, but essentially, technologists and designers, let's face it, need to work together. So to design products that are usable. So in summary, and I'll unpack these numbers in a bit, but the big high-level summary is if you can talk to your stakeholders that you are going to save money, cash saving 30%, which is what we've generated based on working with the Center of Excellence to generate some real numbers based on historic numbers, that's a pretty big number. Then, on top of it, conversions. So if you're designing a public-facing website that may have e-commerce attached to it, then clearly you are enabling to convert more, whatever it is, products, services, tickets. And that's obviously a key revenue driver. Loyalty, designing purposeful and useful products and services means you will get people coming back again and again to use it. And so it essentially, these are the ROI drivers that define design thinking, the application of UX, and then also designing the design system to support the whole process. So, and this is all based on, the starting point is looking at the process, how an organization actually launches products and services to market. And this company, like so many other companies, as I said, tech-driven, and on the left-hand side, that's the legacy process, which means pretty much half of the money gets invested into development because it's the waterfall methodology of developing something for a year and then figuring out how it looks like later and how it works like later. So the actual sort of proportion here is what we were provided by, we're not making this up, by the Center of Excellence to prove what we had to prove. And then focusing on evolving the design process on the right-hand side, it means reducing the cost by 30%, increasing the time to market significantly, but also, interestingly enough, of course, spending a lot more investment into the UX side to actually generate a really useful products and services that will succeed on first launch. So unpacking those numbers a little bit more. So a design system can ultimately generate a 50% saving for common patterns and journeys. And then, designers and coders can focus on real value add stuff, i.e. coming up with new ideas and innovating new things. Right first time, and there's many numbers out there. It used to cost 100 times more to fix something once it's developed. This is a different number here, but based on recent stats. And it reduces, ultimately, getting it right the first time, using the UX process, design process to test something before you launch it, before you actually build it potentially as well, or do it all in parallel, will reduce the management cost of up to 50% in the future. And as the design system matures, it will increase the product development efficiency and efficacy as well by 25% roughly. Speed to market, I already mentioned that, is absolutely crucial. You can't waste time to get to market. It will generate that competitive advantage. It will generate those conversions much, much quicker. So that's a key metric to take back into the business case as well. And a trigger for innovation. So it's allowing the designers, developers, strategists, etc., to actually focus on new things that will make a real difference versus reinventing the same things. It allows for faster prototyping because everything is in the system. The baselines are in the system. And so you can build functional prototypes very, very quickly. And then this is a metric that's hard to measure because it completely depends on any product and service that you're designing. It increases usability, and that's obviously a very important metric, which means it will increase adoption of the product, and as a result, the ROI. And last but not least, like Miranda mentioned, it is a factor for brand equity. So it increases brand equity as you have consistency and a brand being memorable and not being fragmented. That increases brand equity and perception. So some hard numbers. So said company we were working for, where we won the pitch but had to then work very, very hard to sell it into the organization. What we started off with was an approach, and I'll talk you through very high level, is we looked at how can we measure the sort of projection savings focused based on the fact that this client has 1,600 applications. So where do we start? We started with some modern web applications, some legacy web applications, some mobile apps, and some websites at different complexities, different alignments, looked at how much the work impact was, looked at how much rework needed to be done. These are not our numbers, these are the Center of Excellence numbers. And then the savings, and the same for UX and UI and front-end development. So if you add all of this up, this is the cost saving based on the design system for 10 and 15 mobile legacy replacements or evolutions. So this is a really, really big number. We couldn't use this number because the client was too embarrassed. So we had to dumb it down. So looking at it a slightly different way, so there's two ways. There's two things that you need to consider in a business case. One is to actually pay for the design system upfront, which is a pretty big number in some cases, depending how ambitious you are. So we looked at how can we sort of figure that one out. So if we look at this sort of small to medium-sized application example, so front-end dev costs about that, UX UI costs about that, subtotal savings is 114,000. If you then multiply that by times 4, you get this number. And if you look at a rough estimate of what a design system costs with an adoption program and a governance model and all strings attached, then you have your ROI for the front-up investment into the design system. Those kind of conversations work really well with stakeholders because you can measure that. So, in summary, old world, waterfall, no design system. New app costs this. New world, much reduced. Time to market, 12 months. New world, 3 months. Massive advantage. Build, 70% of the cost. New world, 50% of the cost. UX, 30%. Now, focus, 50%, because you need more investment in the UX to actually make the product work way better. And then that summarizes into old world, missed conversions, lack of engagement, because there's too little design involvement in making the product work, and reduced scalability. And then new world, obviously increased conversions, engagement, and it's future ready for scalability. So how to measure? In summary, there's quant and there's qual. And obviously quant is much easier to measure than qual, but not to be underestimated and very, very important. So quant. So you can look at how much time you spend on designing a new application and how many resources and how much they cost. It's a really good starting point. Look at how much you're reworking the application to get it right, and when that happens before or after build and after launch, and how much you're repeating work. Look at how much technical and design debt you have, how many components you've designed 50 million times, and how little they have been used. Time to market, we've already talked about that. It's crucial. If it takes 12 months, you may miss the boat. If it takes 3 months, you will be out there first, potentially. Scalability, how long does it take to actually add new features and functionalities to an application? And adoption and loyalty. Do people actually use the product and service that you're bringing out to market? If they don't, that's a key problem. You can measure that. You can measure the loyalty, you can measure the adoption. The qual, harder to measure, but absolutely important. Brand equity, so keeping the brand consistent. Innovation, how much a company is able to innovate based on not thinking about the things that are repeatable frameworks and actually think about new things. Brand perception, team happiness. I mean, let's face it, nobody wants to redesign the same component 50 times. You might as well slit your wrist. It's depressing, and it doesn't create happiness. So a design system will create happiness because you can focus on the things that actually make a difference. Client NPS score, yeah, you can measure that. And then the last one, I don't know. There's many other things you can measure, qual, but I'm trying to keep it simple here. So this is, in summary, a really good approach to focus on a business case. Focus on the pain points and then start measuring and work with actual numbers, because no C-suite owner will buy into, ooh, it's roughly going to be that. No, it's not going to. It's very hard to get investment into that. Oops. So embed and adopt. So how to make sure that this system, because the other thing you have to promise to your stakeholders who give you the money is that it's not going to end up on a shelf and gather dust, because that's completely wasted investment. So, but it's also considering the psychology of change, because a design system ultimately is impacting on business transformation. It's not to be underestimated. If a company has never worked with a design process, it is a fundamental change how a company will work in the future. And change is hard. Moving a big corporate into that framework, into that new way of working, is like moving a tanker. And it hurts. Change hurts, because you have people having to change the status quo and how they've always used to work. So it is a process. It's a process you need to take companies on a journey on. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to sell that in. So what are the adoption hurdles? So culture and behavior. If you haven't got a culture that likes to collaborate across boundaries, that's a cultural change that you need to implement with a design system, because a design system only works really, really well if you actually communicate and collaborate. And it's a change of behavior. So using a design process once doesn't mean you've ticked the box. You have to internalize it into the organization, that you have to work completely differently. So the other ones are socio and technical. So it is about getting people together to collaborate. You have many different stakeholders. You've got the project sponsors, you've got the designers, the developers, the strategists. You have the different business silos that have a say in this and need to use the system. And then obviously you have the technical systems requirements. So the two need to come together. The other perception is that design systems are totalitarian, and designers hate to be told what to do. Oh my God, we hate it. We hate to work to rules. However, because we all want to do new things. However, if we can just focus on the things that are established, then we can focus on the things that actually, are going to make a difference. So it's really important to design a design system that invites innovation and creativity. It's not about rigid rules. That's not going to work. People will clock out. So it is about designing the right governance process to invite these conversations in and to promote best practice, and also to keep adapting the design system, because time doesn't stand still. Design patterns change, design frameworks change, best practice changes. So design system needs to keep up with that really, really quickly. And I think I've already talked about that. So perception is it reduces exploration and divergence, and clearly it's key to design the design system around that, the process around to basically avoid that negative perception. So how to make that happen? Very quickly, it's about step change. So it's not going to work if you're saying it's going to take us 3 months or a year to deliver a design system, because you need to start delivering benefits, measurable benefits, step by step, to keep everybody motivated. So start off with the users. So figure out who the end users are, classic design process. What are their needs? What are their drivers? What do they need to get out of the design system? What are their pain points? Fundamental step number 1. It makes no sense to start with best practice in theory, because that may not apply to your organization. And you're not going to get the buy-in if you don't ask people what they need. Start small. Start small and then build up towards a roadmap. Empowerment and consensus. So make sure that the team that's working, the designers, developers, etc., are empowered to contribute and consent to the style guides. Because another one is, and designers absolutely hate that too, is having the style guides being prescribed to you and you have no say in it whatsoever, which means you have a complete lack of ownership and lack of engagement. So make sure that you involve the design community, and I'm probably running out of time. Demo why, demo the benefits of how you're saving time, how you're empowering people, how you're delivering best practice. Manage perception, the negative perceptions that I've talked about, and then make sure it's a shared ownership. And that takes me to the, in a moment, the governance, but a quick route to success. So we have sort of four sort of steps for, or principles, design principles for design systems. They need to inspire, inform, create, consult and educate, and collaborate and manage. So if we look at how we structure an adoption program, it fits in quite nicely. So to design an adoption program, to ensure that the organization buys into it, that you train the trainers, that everybody knows what they're doing, start off with a pilot project. And it's actually really, really good to start with a new project rather than a legacy project, because you can start with a clean sheet. Apply the best practice design process that you want to communicate in the design system. So this is about bringing the design process to life. Start from the beginning to end, a proper design process, a proper development process. Then record it. And bring it up as a show and tell that can be shared later on in the design system or in demonstrations or the actual adoption program. Because again, it's not about rigid rules and theory, it's about bringing how this thing works to life. Then run adoption workshops. Make sure that anybody that needs to govern or be part of the whole ecosystem knows what they're doing and can contribute. And then embed and define governance. So this is, again, design systems don't run themselves. So you need to figure out who manages it, who owns it, who drives it, who collaborates, and how the whole sort of process works. So finally, it would be so nice if this thing, once it's built, could just live on its own. It's going to die, ultimately. And the most important thing is you need to figure out some governance and how this whole thing is going to measure. Now, these graphs you will recognize by Nathan Curtis. I did get that code up. So there's 3 different models that have been used in the industry. One is the solitary model, where one overlord rules the design system. The second one is the centralized model, where a design team is essentially managing the design system. And the third one is the federated model. So it seems to be, and it makes a lot of sense with our clients, that a hybrid model of the 3 is working best. Because one person will be a bottleneck, you're not going to get anything done, and it's going to be burnout for that person. So this seems to be the sort of the recommended way forward, and it works with our clients. And last but not least, you need to feed this. It's alive. It's not going to survive unless you keep feeding it and unless you keep communicating to your audiences what has been achieved, new best practice examples, incentivize people to contribute, make it part of the corporate culture or the startup culture to have this as a living, breathing system that will promote you as the best company out there. And that's it. Thank you very much.